2 weeks after the terror attack in Jammu and Kashmir's Pahalgam that took the lives of 26 civilians, India has responded. Indian Defence Forces carried out precision strikes on 9 terror camps in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Codenamed Operation Sindoor, the strikes come 2 weeks after terrorists targeted tourists in Jammu and Kashmir's Pahalgam, resulting in the death of 26 civilians. The strikes were carried out between 1:05 a.m. and 1:30 a.m. and it targeted 9 terror sites at 7 places in Pakistan and POK. These places include Muzaffarabad, Kotli, Bhimber, Gulpur, Sialkot, Muridke, Bhavalpur. Pakistan confirmed the strikes and said that 26 people were killed and dozens injured. Pakistan has termed India's strikes as an act of war and vows to respond at a time and place of its choosing. 15 Indian civilians were killed near the border in Jammu and Kashmir after heavy shelling by Pakistani forces, according to sources in the Indian Army. India has also expanded its diplomatic outreach. Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri briefed envoys from 13 nations. As per sources, India has made it clear that its action was in response to be a terrorist attack by Pakistan. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh said that India has exercised its right to respond to the attack on its soil.
हम कह सकते हैं एक तरीके की सटीकता, सतर्कता और मानवीयता यह हमारी भारत की सेना के जवानों ने दिखाई है, जिसके लिए मैं हमारे सेना के जवानों और अधिकारियों को पूरे देश की ओर से मैं साधुवाद देता हूं और सेना को संपूर्ण संबल प्रदान करने के लिए अपने प्रधानमंत्री माननीय नरेंद्र मोदी जी को भी मैं साधुवाद देता हूं.
Let me go across to our special guest this evening. We're joined by Raymond Vickery, Senior Associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies with us. He's also a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce and Trade. We also have with us global security expert and author Max Abrahams. He's also joining us, currently the Associate Professor of Political Science at Northeastern University. Thank you very much for joining us on the show today. Max, what's your reading of the present situation? How do you think things will move on from here? Because Pakistan has said that so far it has been responding with firing at different posts along the LOC and the international border, but it will retaliate very aggressively against India. So how do you see things between India and Pakistan worsening, or what kind of a road will it take over the next few days?
Not that clear cut, because on the one hand, Pakistan is saying it's definitely going to retaliate. On the other hand, if you listen to what New Delhi is saying, they're really emphasizing that the Indian attacks were, kind of in a way limited. They didn't cross into the territory. The shots were restricted to terrorist targets. They didn't go after the Pakistani military. They didn't target Pakistani civilians or economic targets, and that essentially justice has been served. So I think that what really matters a lot here is what Pakistan does next. I could foresee a situation where Pakistan responds in kind, and then India needs to respond, and we're in a tit-for-tat scenario. Obviously, the best-case scenario would be for Pakistan to say, look, there was a terrorist attack. Of course, India needed to respond. It responded, and now we're even. But I don't have confidence that that's the way Pakistan will see things.
Right. Let me also get in Raymond Vickery. Raymond, what's your reading of the U.S. response? Marco Rubio has spoken to leaders both in Pakistan and India. Ajit Doval, the Indian NSA, has spoken to Marco Rubio and also explained that this was a non-escalatory strike by India. Our aim was only to target Pakistani terror camps, not Pakistani civilians or the army or Pakistan vital installations. But if Pakistan responds, then India will respond as well. Do you feel that the US right now would be working towards a de-escalation?
Well, thanks very much for having me. I think it is perfectly plain that peace, like war, must be waged. And so it takes a comprehensive approach. I do not think that President Trump's response is the correct one, and that is that fighting has been going on for hundreds, and he even said 1,000 years, and it's a shame, and sort of stepping aside from an active role. The United States needs to stand toe to toe, shoulder to shoulder with India in this egregious act of terrorism. This isn't the usual cross-border kind of terror. This is targeting a civilian tourist, which is the rawest form of terrorism. That having been said, it is perfectly apparent that generalized war is not the way to deal with radical Islamic terrorism. That has been shown in Afghanistan, where the United States and its partners failed to be able to mount an effective response. It's been shown Israel, and so the United States needs to do much more and play an active role as it did with Cargill incursion, to be able to help this from becoming a generalized war, which is not good for India. It's not good for the world at all.
Right. Let me get in Max once again. Max, how do you see the support for India at this juncture? You know, we had been planning this for some time. This didn't happen as a knee-jerk reaction. For the last 2 weeks, India has been holding military drills all around the country. The Prime Minister has been meeting service chiefs almost on a daily basis, saying that we're giving you operational freedom to respond at a time and place of your choosing. Having said that, there were mock drills also being conducted, and that was pre-scheduled over the last few days. That was known. And then the strike happened overnight. Now, considering that everything was showing that there is going to be some sort of response from India, all allies were also taken on board. Do you feel that there is support from the international community for what India has done?
Well, you know, India has its allies and Pakistan has its allies. I can say that the Trump administration very much values India as an ally. India, in a way, has actually been elevated under the Trump administration because the U.S., you know, under Trump, especially if you look at the specific people in the Pentagon, like Elbridge Colby, they really believe that the main threat to the United States is China. And it's in that context where India has been elevated even more as a U.S. ally. In response to the attack, the United States immediately offered its sympathy and support for India. What the United States did not do is go as far as India as to unequivocally pin the blame on Pakistan. And I know that it is true that Trump has said, you know, it's a shame, but that shouldn't leave audiences with the impression that Washington isn't doing anything to reduce tensions. In fact, Rubio and many, you know, the State Department more generally, they have been working hard in order to try to contain the threat so it doesn't become a globalized war. In general, what I'm hearing from the international community, whether it's from countries that are more pro-India or countries that are more pro-Pakistan, is that the stakes here are so severe with two nuclear powers that de-escalation simply must happen. And so I think that it's hard to know this for sure, but my sense is that the international community is having a positive effect, at least in terms of working towards a situation where India has shot this attack, and now there's going to be pressure on Pakistan not to retaliate, at least not to retaliate too much, so we can turn the corner on this crisis.
Right. Mr. Vikri, today we saw the Indian Foreign Secretary meeting envoys of about 13 to 15 nations. He told them that if Pakistan responds now, India will respond. we were very clear this was a targeted, limited operation against 9 terror camps. Having said that, how much weight will India's diplomatic outreach at the UN Security Council have? What can India do at the UN in order to put pressure on Pakistan? And will that have any impact on Pakistan's strategy?
Well, I think that India must reach out, as it has, to nations across the globe. The United Nations is one forum for doing that. But there needs to be a broader approach, both by India, the United States, Russia, China, if you will, to the problem of terrorism. You have seen that China has not been helpful in this situation at all, seeming to tilt toward Pakistan. So I think the reaching out has to be done, but this can't be a one-off kind of a situation. Because of Ukraine and Gaza, we've really turned away from the threat that organizations like LET, provide to India and to the world. Former National Security Advisor Bolton has advised that elements of Hamas may be involved in this. So it goes back to a comprehensive approach. The United States needs to be more deeply involved in sharing intelligence with India. It needs to work with Pakistan. It has its own problems in regard to terrorism. The world has not come to grips with this threat from radical Islamic terrorism. And it is not going to do any good for the United States to take any position that this has been going on for hundreds of years and is a shame, and there's really not too much that can be done about it. Now, hopefully Secretary Rubio and others who have a greater appreciation for the role of international institutions will be able to aid India in terms of what happens at the UN and what happens in other fora. But it's for sure the generalized war is going to be bad for economic development in India. It is not going to redound to the benefit of anyone. And it is a crisis situation and deserves to be handled as such at the United Nations and in fora across the world.
Right. Max, what's your reading of the best case scenario in terms of the tensions going forward? Because Pakistan has said it will respond. And what is the worst case scenario you're possibly looking at? And let me also add one more question over there. Pakistan, in its present economic situation, do you think they can afford going into a full-blown conflict or war with India?
I think that the worst case scenario is one where this situation just spirals out of control. And that's a very real concern. Whenever violence is used, you sort of cede an element of control. And even if both countries don't want that to happen, it can happen due to domestic pressures, misperceptions, frankly, attacks that have gone awry. So the worst case scenario, I think now, is Pakistan responds, and it's perceived by India as excessive, beyond the so-called rules of the game. And then we're tit for tat all the way up until the nuclear escalation ladder, if you will. So it's not hard to imagine a worst case scenario. Of course, I don't think that that's likely. That's improbable, because neither country has an interest in doing that, and the international community doesn't want for that to happen either. But it is risky when you use violence, especially by adversaries, and especially ones who are right next to each other, which reduces decision-making times. I do think that Pakistan would be able, certainly, to inflict a tremendous amount of damage if it wanted to, given the nature of its military. So we need to be very careful. I do want to say that even though I'm sort of pushing the value of restraint, it should also be said that that terrorism needs to be countered in a very serious way. These terrorists were, Islamist extremist terrorists. They went up to the civilians and had them recite Islamic verses in order to decide whom to spare. And so there's no question that these are Islamist terrorists and they need to be dealt with in a lethal fashion. For that reason, I am pleased that India has directed its strikes onto the terrorist camps. I think that attacking terrorists is actually more helpful than a lot of people think. There seem to be a lot of influencers and pundits who are always saying that counterterrorism doesn't work. Look at what happened with the Iraq War. But I think if you look over the last couple of years, what's happened to Hamas in Gaza, what's happened to Hezbollah in Lebanon, the reality is that when a target country is highly motivated to counter a terrorist threat, it is indeed possible.
Right. We're going to take a short break, but we'll request Raymond Vickery and Max Abrahams to stay with us. We'll be right back with a lot more information and analysis on India's strong anti-terror operation against Pakistan.